thank you for this opportunity to come before you to acknowledge that we are lacking. We are lacking in so many ways, and Father, maybe most especially today, we feel burdened as parents and grandparents and caretakers. And so, Father, would you just encourage us this morning? Would you help us to see places where we can love you better, teach our children to love you better, and walk more closely with you? We pray in Jesus' name, amen. So we didn't have Sunday school last week, which means we're only going to get 7 sessions of this class, which is fine because I can talk faster if I need to. So 2 weeks ago, if you weren't here on that really strange Sunday, we talked about sort of the relational piece of our kids' lives and how important friendships are and small groups for our families. And if you haven't watched it yet, I especially want to encourage you to go back and watch. Even if you don't watch the whole thing, fast forward and watch the section where Timo Fang gave his testimony. Timo is a college sophomore. His family began coming to Stone Hill, I want to say he was like maybe 9 or 10. And his family, I don't think, again, I don't want to speak for Laura and Alex, but I'm not sure that there was an intentionality to like, we're going to do all of these things to set our kids up for complete success. But what they did do gave their kids the potential for a lot of really meaningful things. Meaningful relationships. So their family joined a small group pretty quickly as they got here, and Timo shared about how that small group and the relationships that came out of that small group are still with him today as he's, 4 states away or something, going to college. And how watching his parents and the adults around him lead well through hospitality and caring for one another, he then began sort of, without even knowing it, a little bit of a ministry of his own, caring for other students. I was actually just talking to a parent a minute ago, saying that her son, who's in high school today, still has like long conversations sometimes on the weekend with Timo, who's in Ohio. And so I want to encourage you that to watch that video. I want to, a couple of the things that we talked about. So if you didn't pick up the colorful sheets, or if you don't have them from a couple weeks ago, I want to encourage you to grab them. So one of the things that we talked about last time is this idea, this is the sheet that says parental influence, is this idea that when our kids are babies, they need us around them 24 hours a day, basically. All the minutes that they're awake, we're pretty much in contact with them. If we're not holding them, we're feeding them, we're changing them, we have an eye on them, we've strapped them into a carrier, they're in a play seat next to us in the kitchen. They're close by, and we have a lot of influence over their physical domain, but they're not really able to have a conversation or really understand any of what we're doing. So there's not a lot of like relational influence. And as they get older, they begin to understand more of what we're saying, they can interact with us more, but they need less of our time, right? You can leave your 4-year-old in their room to play a little bit while you go to the bathroom or make a lunch or take a phone call. You don't have to be on top of them 100% of the time. But if you look all the way at the end of this like little timeline here, and you see like 11th, 12th grade and going on, this estimate is that we get about 2 hours of relational influence with our teens a day. That means there are 22 hours in which they are being influenced by lots and lots of other things that we need to be just mindful of. And so how do we use those 2 hours well? If we're driving in the car, I was terrible at this. I love to play my music and listen to my podcasts, and my kids just had to kind of deal with it. And then it occurred to me, like, this is a great time to talk to them and to, ask them about things that matter to them, because it's a captive audience. They can't leave you. They probably don't have their earbuds close at hand. You're going to yell at them if they turn on TikTok. So, it's an easier time to talk to them. Meals can be hard. I know there was a period of time when the 5 of us didn't sit down to a meal together for weeks on end. And it's just sort of the way the Northeast American family life can go sometimes. So what do we do about that? So there's this book called Sticky Faith that I highly recommend, and I will give you a list of resources at the end, and that will probably be highlighted and underlined and super scored. So it's this idea, and I know my drawing's really tiny. We call this Liam because Liam has started spiking his hair, and we love it. So this is Liam, and Liam has a lot of people who are around him all the time. Liam is a middle schooler. He's got Michael, right? Pastor Michael. He's got Ben. He's got his mom and his dad, right? Great adults around him who love him and care for him and are speaking truth and living the gospel into his life. He's got a coach, and maybe he's got a neighbor who he spends time with. He helps shovel their snow, and this little old lady, tells him about what it was like growing up. And then, maybe not for Liam, but maybe another teenager his age might have a therapist, might have an aunt or an uncle who they spend a lot of time with, right? So what we have is this idea that to maintain our kids' faith as they grow, we need to build this circle of influence around them of really strong truth-telling voices. Now notice I didn't say that all of these people are Christians necessarily. I don't know. We can hope that most of them are. But what we're doing is, right, mom and dad, they need to be vetting all these folks. But mom and dad don't get all the say in who's around their kid because their kid goes to school. Their kid has a soccer coach. Their kid, maybe he has an after-school job. You don't get to pick everyone. So what you're hoping is that the voices that are around your kid are really good, solid, honest, loving voices. Because what happens is, notice that these voices, they're not all connected anymore, right? When I think I did this picture last time. When our babies are little, it's like mom and dad are both holding hands around this baby, and you just don't let go. You stay connected the whole time because to keep that baby alive, somebody's got to be on it, right? But now there are gaps, right? And so, what is the influence that's coming in from outside that circle of deep folks? And so the hope is that this circle is feeding our student well enough that when those outside influences come in, they're filtering, right? So when our kids are scrolling through TikTok, and maybe they're watching funny cat videos, and then some random influencer shows up in their scroll saying something, and they're like, oh, that's new. Are they filtering it through the voice of someone in their circle who has given them just wisdom and discernment to make good choices? Because also outside of this circle are their friends and their classmates. And we don't want to discourage them from making relationships with those people, but what we want to do is say, these are the most important right now, so that all of those outside voices have a little bit of a filter to run through, so that we don't end up with kids who just have no idea where truth lives in their lives. Does that make sense? Okay, so having said that, because I think that's going to be a big piece of what we're going to talk about today. Today I want to talk a little bit about our kids' physical and mental health. And I know they're kind of two separate parts of their lives, but I hope today you'll see how interconnected they are, and then how connected they are to our kids' spiritual lives, which is where we're going next week. Because I know some of you are like, when are we getting to the spiritual lives? That's the thing. And I think my hope is that you'll see how interconnected all of this is. So when we talked about the four realms, and I talked about physical health, I talked about kind of three main components: movement, sleep, and the food that they eat. And so what I want to just do is kind of run through some of the benefits of these things, and when we do them well, what goes well, right? In a perfect world, if we were doing all the things well, how does this benefit our kids? How does this help them be successful? So when I say movement, I don't necessarily mean they have to play 3 sports a year, do travel and club sports in the summer, get private coaches and whatever for all the things. I actually think that that's not a healthy, successful thing for your kids to be doing all the time. Some kids are very gifted at a sport. Great. Do the thing that they're gifted at. Please. If your kid isn't gifted at sports, doesn't know which foot is which, please don't force them practice swinging a bat 52 times an hour because they will hate it, and then they will eventually not love you as much as they could. So let's talk about some of the benefits of movement, right? Obviously, weight control, which I don't want to spend a lot of time here, but for some of our kids, they spend a lot of time sitting and staring at a screen, and it's just, it adds to their bodies. Because they're still eating the same amount of Cheetos and fruit roll-ups, they're just not burning off the Cheetos and fruit roll-ups, right? So even just taking your kids for a walk after dinner on a summer evening, we're gonna just take a walk, we're gonna just, we're gonna pray for our neighborhood, right? We're gonna walk down the street, we're gonna pray for the dogs who bark too much, we're gonna pray for the kids who we can hear screaming in their backyard pool, whatever it is. I wanna encourage you to do that. Obviously, I don't need to tell you, but there's a slew of health issues that are, we reduce the risk when we move our bodies. So again, I don't know what your family's potential risks are for health issues, but chances are something could be reduced if your kids are just moving their bodies. And that goes for us too, right? This is not rocket science. This is the one that I think is maybe the most important, and I'll circle back to it at the end. But moving your body improves your mood every single time, without fail. It may not be a big jump in your mood, it may not be immediately, but over time, moving your body makes you feel better across the board. It boosts your energy. It helps you sleep better. I don't recommend maybe working out right before bed because that actually increases your endorphins, which will make it harder to sleep. And then you'll say she lied to us. But after dinner, at lunchtime, I work here at the church, and we're actually encouraged, like after lunch, get up, move your body. Like some of us will walk around the church 3 or 4 times just to kind of move our bodies, get ourselves flowing, get our blood flowing before we sit back down on our computers and stare at a screen for another 3 or 4 hours. This leads, and then this next point, right? Moving our bodies can be social and fun, right? It can be throwing a football with friends after school in the school playground. It can be riding your bike with friends around the neighborhood and maybe getting into a little bit of mischief in the park. I'm actually a little bit of a proponent of letting our kids get into a little bit of mischief in the park, as long as it's good mischief. They need to explore, right? And sometimes exploring means giving them some freedom to go do something in a way that we understand. We've set some boundaries, but it's not you need to wear a body cam so I can watch what you're doing the whole time. It's you can go to this neighborhood with these friends and do these things on your bike. Do not get in a car. If you go inside someone's home, you need to call me from their home and let me know, right? Like we set up some boundaries, but we encourage them to get out and move their bodies, get some freedom, and be curious about the world because that's how they learn. And this ties them back to this relational piece, right? We want them to build strong friendships. We want them to meet other people. I want my kids' friends to walk in my house and not be afraid to talk to me. Because if your kids' friends come over, or if you know your kids are going to someone's house and they're like afraid to speak to the parents, they don't spend enough time with other adults, period. So if you know your kids are afraid to talk to other adults, they need to go spend more time with other adults. Not in the scary way, but like in a, hey, how about if you help out in the cafe on a Sunday morning? I'm gonna do front door team. You serve in the cafe by setting up the bagels. You have to talk to other people. Right? You have to learn their names. Whether you call them Mrs. Fang or you call them Laura is up to you, but it requires them to learn some new relational skills that will benefit them, because Laura will remember your kid and she will say hi to them and initiate a conversation the next time she sees them, and it will break down some of those like generational walls that we sometimes can build up, and will increase the circle that your kid has around them, because now Laura is in this circle. Because Laura will see your kid and think about your kid. I had a congregant text me. I think it was 6:30 a.m. So I didn't get it until like 8 a.m. because my phone is off. it was about 6:30 a.m. and she texted me on like Friday or Saturday morning to say, hey, I'm praying for your kid. Are these still the prayer requests for your kid? And I was like, when was the last time I talked to this person about this one kid's like prayer request? I have no idea. But like my mama heart swelled about 3 sizes because that meant I had no idea this woman was praying for my kids. And here she is, it's 6:30 in the morning. No ma'am. That's just wonderful. That just brought me so much joy and it gave me so much hope for his future. Okay. So movement, yes, okay. So we talked about how like movement has benefits to our whole body. And I think it's safe to say that, you know, when we move our bodies, our heart rates go up, our blood pressure goes up, the blood flow goes, you know, blood is flowing to parts of our body. Blood is flowing to our brains more when we are walking down the street than when we are scrolling on our phones. That should be a no-brainer. But for really good brain health, we need really good blood flow. And if we're only sitting on our couches or in our beds or in a gaming chair, when we have downtime, our brains are not benefiting. Even if we're studying for the SATs or practicing our math or reading a book, those are good things, but sometimes we gotta get up and move our bodies and do something else. I have a few ideas for that we can circle back to. That blood flow to our brain, it improves our memory. You know, if your kids are studying 6 hours over the weekend for a history test and then they come home and they've not gotten a great grade, chances are it's because their memory's not great, not because they didn't do a good job studying. Or they stayed up really late studying and their brains retained 0 of that information because it was just beyond their brain's ability to function. And then this one I think is really important because this is the part of movement benefits that I don't feel like I ever got as a teenager or even as a young adult. So moving your body actually lowers the impact that stress has on your body. It doesn't remove stress. It doesn't lower your cortisol. You know, you can, if something is stressing you out, going for a walk isn't going to just undo all the cortisol that's building up in your body. But what it is going to do is release endorphins that will hit those opiate receptors in your brain and sort of reverse some of the brain effect of the cortisol. And I'm not a neuroscientist, so I'm not going to try to give you all of the science behind that. I can give you resources to look at that would give you videos and charts and all the things. But if you've ever like had a gym membership and you go to like, I don't know, like a step class every Tuesday and Friday and you get out of that step class and you just feel like you're walking on clouds and you're just super excited, that's that euphoria state that you get when your body is just pumping with endorphins. And it doesn't take away the anxiety or the stress or the depression, but it drastically lowers the impact that all of that has on your body. And you know, our kids are being called the anxious generation for a reason. And so if we want to try to combat that and fight against that, we need to pray for them. But we also need to get our bodies moving because that is just proven science that it helps. Okay, let's transition into sleep. The thing that I tell kids all the time is that sleep is the time when your body repairs itself, when it heals itself. It's kind of like a self-cleaning mode, right? You know, like if you have an old oven and you like lock it and put it on self-cleaning mode and it doesn't actually clean, but it makes you feel really good, like you've done something great for your oven. Sleep actually is like that. When you're sleeping in that deep sleep is when your body can restore your muscles, it kind of self-regulates in that time. And so if you're not getting enough sleep or you're not getting the right kind of sleep, your body can't do all of the repair and healing it needs. It's kind of like when you take your car to the mechanic and you're like, in 20 minutes, can you change the transmission and all 4 tires? Well, no, he can't do that. He might be able to change your oil in a really like haphazard way, but he can't do all of that work. You need to give him the time that he needs to repair your car, and our bodies are the same way. So 8 to 10 hours, right? And keeping consistent bedtimes, even on the weekends. And guys, we were terrible at this as parents, so please hear me confessing to you now. I am not a good example of this. I know this from clinical study. I do not know this from my own example. But, you know, we until not too long ago, we didn't allow our kids to have their phones or their computers or any screens in their bedroom, ever. Not even to do homework. It wasn't until our youngest hit a point in his studies where he actually needed to be in a quiet space, and our house is too tiny for him to be in a quiet space any other place but his bedroom. But he was probably also the most disciplined with his screens, so we were the least worried about him. So, you know, have conversation. If your kids are really old, you know, junior, senior in high school, this is going to be a harder conversation. But if your kids don't have phones yet, I highly encourage setting really, really loving boundaries around screens. You know, one person I know, phones weren't allowed on the second floor of their house, period. You gotta go upstairs for something, your phone stays down here, even if you're coming right back. That's the rule, and we maintain it for all trips upstairs. Now, do they forget sometimes? Of course, and we're not gonna penalize them for running upstairs with their phone in their pocket to grab their hat before they're running out the door, right? But if you're going upstairs to take a shower, your phone stays downstairs. If your kids are already addicted to like Monster drinks, they drink coffee every day, let's have some conversations about how we can start to undo some of that. These things they're just not healthy for us. I drink a lot of coffee. I actually drank a lot more coffee a few years ago than I do now. I've been trying to drink less of it, but it's hard. We grew up saying that coffee was the way to combat our sleepiness, and we didn't talk about the fact that maybe we should just get more sleep. But studies have shown that if a person doesn't get enough sleep, they're actually more likely to choose other unhealthy behaviors, including, and we'll get to this, unhealthy foods, eating later at night, eating on the run, quick, convenient, processed foods. So what are the benefits of sleep? Obviously, I said this is when your body repairs itself, but it also improves their attention, right? I mentioned this, I think, a couple of weeks ago, that the time of night that your kids get their best sleep is from like 10 or 11 p.m. to like 2 to 4 a.m. That deep sleep cycle between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. is the most important sleep cycle of the night. So if your kid has a really important test the next day, you take it all away at 10 p.m., they go to bed, you get up with them. Here's the trick. You got to get up with them at 3 a.m. because otherwise they're not getting up, right? If we're going to enforce the early bedtime, sometimes we gotta sacrifice with the early rise time. And I am the late night parent, so I would stay up until the kids went to bed, and Dave's the early parent, so he would get up at the early time. Our kids never chose this for themselves, but we always offered it. If you're going to get up, if you want to go to bed at a good time and get up early so you can study, here's how we're going to work this. It improves their mood, right? Tell me what your sleepy kid is like on the ride to school in the morning. Are they just a joy and a delight to behold? Or do you kind of wish that you could like throw them out the car at the red light and make them walk the rest of the way, right? I'm speaking from experience. I have one child who pretty much from the minute he woke up to the minute he got on the bus didn't talk. Because that just was not his best time of day. And that's okay. But when they're well rested, when their bodies are healthier, their moods are improved. That's just basic. All right, so let's talk about food. I am not here to tell you what to feed your kids, because I have a kid who only ate peanut butter and jelly on rice cakes for an entire year, 3 times a day. And I will give you his number if you don't believe me. I have another kid who only ate string beans as his only vegetable for 2 full years. And they had to be a certain size and they had to be lined up. Guys, the struggle is real and I understand it. So if your kid is only eating Cheetos on the ride home from school and gummy bears during lunch because they just don't have the time, it's time for a conversation. Because what is good, right? Food is our fuel. It's the gas we put into our bodies. It's the thing that helps us do the rest of the things. And so we know that it improves our brain health, right? Tons of studies have been done that good, healthy fats in our body actually improve our neural health in our brains. It rebuilds the sheets around our neural endings that actually help us to maintain memory and attention and mood. Are you catching on to the sort of Venn diagram here that where the overlap is in all of these circles? If you are of a certain age, you may have heard the phrase, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. This doesn't mean that you go give your doctor an apple every day and he will stay away. It means that eating good amounts of healthy, fibrous foods actually helps our digestion. When our digestion is healthy, our mood is improved because we're not constipated or have a stomach ache or dehydrated, right? When we put good fuel in our bodies every day, pretty regularly, it actually improves other parts of our lives. And again, it boosts our energy. How many of you have had a kid come home from school so tired and cranky, right? Oh, come on, none of you? Really? Yeah, probably because they're starving and they don't even recognize it as hunger anymore because they've just gotten so used to this feeling. They eat lunch. Some of our high schoolers are eating lunch between 10:30 and 11 a.m. in the day, and then they go a full afternoon, and then they have 2.5 hours of practice, and by the time they drag their exhausted bodies home at 5 or 6 o'clock, they haven't eaten really anything of value since 11 a.m. That is entirely too long to go without food. I want to encourage you to have conversations with your kids about healthy fueling throughout the day. I don't know where your kids go to school, so what their rules are about eating, but my kids we should have bought stock in like Cliff Bars back in 2015, because we would be millionaires by now. But my kids carried Cliff Bars in their bags, a couple a day. My youngest, by the time he was a senior, he was taking 2 lunches and 5 protein bars and eating everything between when he left my house at 7:30 in the morning and when he got home at 5:30 at night. Because that is what he knew his body needed to feel good. He was a runner, a distance runner. If he ran 8 or 10 miles and wasn't well fueled, he could barely move his body the next day. He would be in so much pain. Not because he couldn't do the distance, but because he hadn't fueled his body. It's like running your car on fumes and expecting it to get to California. It's just not gonna work, and you're gonna destroy your car. So what do we do with all of this, right? I hope that you are seeing that there's sort of some overlap between these areas, right? In all of these places, though, I want you to see that good sleep, regular movement, good food, good fuel, it improves our kids' mood. And so that was sort of the thread that I saw here, is we would love our kids to be happier kids, right? That was something that we talked about at the beginning. What do we want for our kids? We want our kids to have more joy in their lives. We want our kids to have just more life in their lives, right? And so it got me to thinking about the fruit of the Spirit. And please understand, I'm not trying to draw crazy comparisons here. But all of these 3 things, if you notice, they all improve our kids' mental health, right? They all are going to improve their mood. They're going to improve their ability to function in the world, which will improve their mental health. There's just no way around it, right? If we're lowering our stress impact, anxiety and depression will have less of an effect on our kids. They may still feel some, which is not unnatural, but it will reduce it some. But think about this, right? So let's name out the fruit of the Spirit. Do this with me. What's the first one? Love, thank you. Next. Okay. Not just the Awana leaders. I know they know this. Somebody else. Love, joy. Peace, thank you. What's the next one? Patience, good. Kindness, I heard it. Goodness. Good. Okay, faithfulness. Faithfulness. I'm too close to read the words. Gentleness. Oh, 1, 2, 3. Oh, yep, self-control. Great. I thought we missed one. All right. So what I want you to see here these are fruit of the Spirit, right? These are gifts that we are given that grow in us as a result of the Holy Spirit's indwelling. I'm not here to teach a lesson on the fruit of the Spirit. But what I would love for you to look at is, how many of these do you see growing in your kids today? In your teenagers? In your preteens? Maybe even in your not preteens? All of these are, I think, unable to grow well when our bodies, our minds are not healthy. Your kid who's super stressed out and tired and cranky all the time, not full of a lot of joy. They might be able to mask joy and pretend to be okay, but that's not joy that comes from the Holy Spirit, right? If your kid has snapped at you 10 minutes before dinner's on the table, that is a starving child. They will have more patience that comes from the Holy Spirit if they had had a snap even an hour before dinner. I think a lot of us were taught, I was taught, we don't eat between meals, right? You eat your breakfast, you wait, you eat your lunch, you wait, you eat your dinner. And then that's it. And the kitchen's closed, right? We all used to like needlepoint these little signs that said, kitchen's closed, and it was so cute. But I think we do our kids a disservice when we close our kitchen, because their bodies are saying, I'm hungry, and instead what we're hearing is belligerent, disrespectful, impatient, just, what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, I think we would see more patience with our kids at 10 minutes to 6 when you're trying to finish dinner, getting dinner on the table. Self-control is a big one. If you've ever been told by a school counselor or a teacher, even at like 2nd or 3rd grade, your child lacks self-control, there's something underneath that we can lean into, and again, each kid is going to be different, so I don't want to just say this is the reason your kid lacks self-control. But we have a child who is on the autism spectrum, and we heard the self-control thing every day. And well, duh, he's on the autism spectrum. It literally is like there's no self-regulation. There is no ability to control your body. However, when we signed him up for a really simple karate program that met 3 times a week for like an hour, and he had a place to kind of learn how to use his body well, some of that self-control issue went away. Not all of it, because there were still things that his body was incapable of managing on its own. But there was a lowering of the lack of self-control and more joy in our house, because he wasn't so wriggly and out of control 24 hours a day. And I have permission to tell you these stories, just so you know. So I think I would encourage you to look at some of these like physical and mental health issues, not from like a clinical doctor perspective, but from if all of these things in combination have a similar impact on my kid, might they have a similar impact on us? How can we be modeling some of this behavior? So I said I would come back and talk about some of the ways in which we can embrace some of these harder things, right? And I talked about maybe taking a walk with your kids after dinner, praying for your neighborhood. If you have littler kids, we used to go on nature walks, and really what that meant was we just took a bag with us, and anything my kids saw that they thought was cool or fun, or they might want to look at underneath a magnifying glass, we would put it in the bag, and if it made it home, great, and if it crumbled to pieces while we were on our way home, oh well. But it was a way that we could interact and move our bodies and give our kids a little bit of like autonomy. Where do you want to walk? I know where we're going. I know our whole neighborhood. Do you want to go left or right? Oh, wait, I get a choice? This is exciting for a 6-year-old. That's like leader of the free world power right there, right? Food is a really hard one. So I want to just pause here for a second. If there are foods you don't love and so you don't make them, I feel you. That lives deep in my heart as well. However, sometimes those are foods that our kids are going to love. There were things my mom never cooked because she didn't like them, and foods she cooked a lot because she loved them. And you can only imagine that for me and my sisters, there was a complete opposite reaction. The foods she loved, we hated. And we were forced to eat them through screaming and crying and a lot of food fighting. But then I discovered foods that my husband loved when we got married that I had never eaten before. And I was like, oh, this is really good. Where was this my whole life? I had never. So I want to encourage you, try new things because it encourages your kids to try new things. Yes, question?
It's not really a question, just a testimony. When my kids were little, like toddlers, I started making steamed broccoli. They were just chewing on them because they have no idea. So by the time they reach elementary school, they love broccoli, whereas all the other kids said, oh, I hate broccoli, I don't like the smell of it. So it's really, you gotta start, if you're still able, just introduce it somehow. Healthy foods instead of processed foods. It's easy to go to supermarket and just, I agree with what Beth was saying.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of value in recognizing where you might have some boundaries that you've set up because of your preferences. We don't eat asparagus because I'm not saying you, I'm saying like, if you don't eat asparagus in your house because you just don't like the smell of it, you don't like the stringiness, the fibrousness, that's fine. But sometimes we as parents have to sacrifice our preferences to expose our kids to new things. I am a late night scroller on my phone, full confession. It is a terrible, horrible thing, and every day I pray that it will go away, and it is just a vice I have not been able to work. It's gotten less, but it is not gone. But when our kids were younger and had phones, all of our phones were out of our bedrooms. It was when our kids got older and they became adults, and we no longer, there were some rules that we decided when some of our kids turned 18. These are your rules now, not ours. You get to decide if you keep them. Some of our phones went into our bedrooms. Some of our bedrooms got TVs. I really want to encourage you, if you think that phones in the bedrooms are not great, I do encourage you, those are the kinds of spaces where you can also model. We had a special platter in our kitchen, right outside our kitchen on an end table, and it's where all the phones went to sleep at night. Obviously my kids' phones went there earlier than ours did, but that way if they got up in the morning, they could see my phone was laying there right next to theirs. And I think that it's a small way that we can be modeling to our kids the importance of minding our own physical and mental health. So, does anyone have any questions about this specific topic or how it relates to the larger relational piece of our kids' lives? Okay, I want to encourage you to take home these handouts. This one that says relational questions at the top, especially if you have more than just teenagers in your home, is a really great. I think it's a really great prayer guide, and hear me out. So these are the kinds of. But this is, it's a front and back. It was a side by side in the book, but it was just too hard to print it for you. This is telling us at different ages and stages of life the motivation behind some of the questions that our kids are asking, or some of the behaviors that our kids are exhibiting. For example, if you turn to the back, if you have a 6th grader, you probably have experienced in your home friendship groups changing, right? Kids have changed the tables they sit at lunch. Maybe they're at a new school completely and they're meeting kids from other elementary schools and they don't know what to do with all these new kids, right? Who do I like? Who are my friends? Who likes me? This is like the most important question our middle schoolers are asking. Where do I go? Where do I fit? Where do I belong in this new realm of humans who are all experiencing hormonal change at different levels? Some of our middle schoolers they look like fully grown adults, and some of them still look like 2nd graders. It's a bizarre world out there, guys, right? And then you'll notice as they get older, as they start to get to high school, that belonging question is so important. And that's why you'll see at the high school, there's so many clubs and activities. Not because and I would encourage you to look at them not as a way to get our kids lots of stuff to do or lots of things to put on their college applications, but to help them find a group of people that they look like in a personality way. Where do they belong? Are they a musician? Help them find an a cappella club or a band group, or maybe they love, maybe you have a performer in the house and you just think that they're goofy, but actually they were born for the stage. Get them to try out for a play. If you have a kid who's constantly throwing a ball up against the side of your house, encourage them to try out for a sport, right? This is where they belong. They belong with people who have similar interests. This also goes for church activities, right? Like, help them to find belonging at church through Sunday school and youth group and Awana and serving. These are places where you're going to meet like-minded folks on the other side of your life, right? Because unless you go to Christian school your whole life, most likely the people you're spending the majority of your day with don't know Jesus. And so you're going to have to find a way that you belong with them, right? And things that you have in common with them that aren't Jesus. So you need people who you also have things in common with that is Jesus, right? And then we get to this end of the line, and this is that what am I doing? And it says the goal is to discern vocation. And I remember being asked the question forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? I've had so many different jobs that have had such different descriptions and goals and objectives that if I had to go back and explain it to 11-year-old me, she would be so confused. Because I'm not a marine biologist studying whales in Alaska. And she would be very confused because that was our goal in middle school. But I think the better question is to ask our kids, rather than what do you want to be when you grow up? Because I think some of us aren't really sure necessarily as fully grown adults, but how do you want to contribute to your community? How do you want to, what questions do you want to help answer in life? What is a problem that you see in the world that you want to contribute to the solution? Because that gets them to think beyond a job title or even a degree at college. Because I think so many of us, we get our degrees and then we find something else that we love and we go do that instead. So that initial degree, I think, is important for a lot of jobs, a lot of vocations in the world, but I don't think that it needs to be the end all of our lives. And I know that some of you may disagree with me, and that's okay. I want to have that conversation. But I think that if our kids are really good at something, we need to ask them what they want to do with that something good. Because you can be a really good violin player and not study music, but still use that violin to build God's kingdom, to serve your community, to help solve problems, to be a part of the solution. And sometimes that violin actually is going to be the vocation, right? We're going to want our kids to be a teacher or a nurse or an engineer, but actually that violin is the thing that God is calling them to. And so we need to be praying through these questions that our kids are going to be, that are motivating what's going on in our kids, because this is going to help us understand what God is doing in their minds and in their bodies. And it all comes back to this, right? That we will see the success and the growth in our kids as we see this fruit of the Spirit growing in them. Because some of our kids get really good at pretending to love one another and be happy at home, and then they go to school and they trash talk you to everyone. Not because they don't love you, really, but because they have no other way of getting through this hard thing that they're dealing with. So if we are asking our kids great questions and then sitting through the answers and listening, even if we don't like the answers, we actually will find that there'll be more peace in our home because our kids are being heard and understood and given some autonomy to make some decisions. And there'll be more patience from you probably because you're not reacting. You're being proactive and thinking through what your kids are actually saying to you and where they're coming from. So I hope that this is helpful. I hope that this improves your family's lives as well, because I think sometimes I think sometimes when our kids are happier, we're happier. When our kids are more healthy, we're healthier. And then it does lead into other parts of our lives. Let me pray, and then if anybody wants to chat one-on-one, I have 15 minutes. Father God, thank you so much for this day. Again, Lord, we just give you all the thanks and praise that we were able to get up this morning and get to class and get to church and spend time with you. Father, would you help us to love our kids well? Would you help us to understand our kids better? Would you give us a sense of what you're doing in their lives? Father, would you give us discernment and wisdom to know how to help them be healthier, stronger, more successful children of God who are made in your image and are loved by you. We thank you for all of these things in Jesus' name. If you didn't sign in, please make sure you do that. It's over by Michael. If your name is not on the list, please just write your name and your email address at the end of the